All right, good morning. It is 10 o'clock on August 22nd. I'm going to call to order this special called City Council meeting for the millage rate. There'll be a public hearing on this item. Following this meeting at 10:30, we will have a budget workshop. These two obviously go hand in hand. So I'm going to open up by recognizing the Finance Director, Jennifer Hallman, for tab A1, public hearing number 1 for the millage rate. Good morning.
Good morning. We'll just do a quick little recap about regarding the 2023 digest. If you want to put it on presentation mode.
Well, I don't think we vote in this meeting, so no. All right, go ahead. It does say it on the, but.
Okay, here we go.
Hang on just a second, Jennifer. Let me just be sure. Kevin, on here, we have, on the agenda, we have adoption of the agenda. Is this a voting meeting? Yeah, okay, we'll move on. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, so we'll start with the basics as far as what's included in the digest. You have real property, personal property, motor vehicles, mobile homes, timber, heavy-duty equipment. All of that added together is your gross digest. Then you subtract all the different kinds of exemptions to get to your net digest. I know this is a lot of numbers, and we'll go over primarily the last column, but I did want to show that this is the one of the required advertisements that's required when adopting or having the public hearings for the millage rate. It is the current 2023 tax digest and the 5-year history of the levy. And it is exactly that. It just shows from year to year in each of those categories what the value of real and personal, motor vehicles, so on and so forth. It tells you what the gross millage rate was, the rollbacks being the rollback for local option sales tax, giving you the net M&O millage, the total of the city taxes levied, and then from the comparison from one year to the next of the net tax dollar increase and the net tax percentage increase. If you go to the last column, you'll see in those the last column, the last 2 rows, leaving or maintaining the 6.25 millage rate, we would generate a little over $1 million in revenue. We'll break that revenue down in some future slides of how much of that revenue is due to reassessment growth and how much of that revenue is due to new growth. But the total increase percentage-wise is 19.28. But let me remind you that maintaining the millage rate at 6.25 is not a 19.28% increase in taxes. Because, like I said, it is made up of 2 types of increases in the digest, and we'll go over what those are. For 2023, our gross digest is $1.2 billion, with 50% of that being in the residential, 28.76 in industrial, and a little over 19% in commercial. We have another 1.89% made up in smaller categories of utilities, motor vehicles, agricultural, conservation, mobile homes, timber, and heavy equipment. As you know, we're split between 2 counties, so part of our digest is from Douglas County, and part of our digest comes from Carroll County. So this is strictly just Douglas County, a comparison from last year to this year, showing the dollar change and the percentage change. Our net digest is 38% in Douglas County. The gross digest had an increase of just under 15%. And our total digest or net digest had an increase of 10.39%, with the greatest change being in the other categories, and I believe that other category was utilities had a substantial increase. The next is Carroll County, again, because we make 38% of our digest is in Douglas County. That remainder of 62% is in Carroll County. We had the gross digest increase of 24.23. Our total net digest in Carroll County increased 25.46, with the greatest increase or percentage change and dollar change being in residential at 29.43%. You take those two together, you put them together, these are your total numbers for the 2023 digest for Villa Rica. You can see that our gross digest increased 20.32%, leaving our net, after you minus out exemptions, our net digest growing 19.28%. And that's what the percentage that you saw in the 5-year history that we had to advertise. So now we're kind of getting into the growth. When we talk about growth in the digest, remember there's two types of growth in the digest. There's inflationary, or you'll also hear the term reassessment growth. And then there's growth because of new or other changes in the digest. And so we split that out by county and by the type of growth. And so for Douglas County, had a little odd thing happen this year that we did go back and question several times to make sure that it was correct. But as odd as it may sound, we had negative growth in Douglas County. The asterisk there has a note down at the bottom that explains why. When we reached out to them, they said that Southwire experienced a substantial increase in the state Freeport exemption in this year as compared to last year. They had an exemption of $223 million this year versus $160 million. So even though we did have reassessment growth, the exemptions were more than that at reassessment growth, so it actually had negative growth in that particular column. New growth in Douglas County is 12.14%. So when you put those two together, we had a total growth in the Douglas County portion of 10.39%. Carroll County was more what we would have expected. Inflationary growth, reassessment growth at 15.09, new growth at 10.38%, with a total change or growth in the Carroll County digest side of 25.46. So when you look at it again, there's that number. So you're seeing in Douglas, for inflationary growth, we had 8.18%. New growth, we had 11.1%. So total Villa Rica digest increased 19.28%. Again, this is just kind of recapping. You take your reassessment, inflationary growth, you add your new growth and other changes, and that gives you your total digest growth. We'll be in some future slides talking about the rollback millage rate, and it is the blue circle that we have to take in consideration when we're talking about millage rate rollback calculation. So let's jump into what the value of a mill was in 2022. Was $857,983. This year, 2023, the value of one mill is $1,023,374. When you break that $1,023,374 into how much of that was attributed to reassessment or inflationary growth, you can see in the blue that was the 8.18% growth in the digest, and that generates $438,000 in revenue. The other changes, or the new growth, was 11.1%, and that revenue that is generated from that growth is just a little over $595,000. So as we have stated, state law requires the calculation of a rollback millage rate to offset any inflationary increases to the digest. So what this is showing is just the calculation of how do we come up with the rollback rate? What is that? How do you come up with the millage equivalent for the rollback? So you take the inflationary growth that we had, which is that reassessment column, and you divide that by the net digest of 2023. You multiply that by the prior year's millage rate, which we maintained it last year at 6.25, to get the millage equivalent of 0.428. So that is the 0.428 is the amount that you use to roll back your current millage rate of 6.25. So the 2023 millage rate rollback would be 5.822. And if the state law requires, even though that we're maintaining our millage rate the same, or we're requesting, proposing, presenting to maintain the millage rate the same, that it is still considered an increase because of the rollback calculation. As I said, staff is recommending that we maintain the millage at 6.25. That means there's no rollback. And that means that it would be 6.25 versus the 5.822 mills. And that revenue generated by that is $438,000. The advertisement that went in the paper, again, a state requirement. They're very particular about the timing of the ads, the size of the ads, and the wording of the ads that have to go in the paper. This is the ad that went in the paper. Has to be 30 inches square. It is letting the citizens know of these public hearings, of what the increase would be based on a fair market homestead value, which is the last paragraph, as well as a non-homestead. Last but not least, there's some good news. I don't know if you've heard in the news about the Homestead Tax Relief Grant. You also hear the acronym of HTRG. It is a one-time property tax relief grant that became law when Governor Kemp signed House Bill 18 on March 13th of this year. And what that does is the Department of Revenue will reduce the assessed value of homesteads by $18,000. This is a property tax reduction for homestead owners of approximately, for the city of Villa Rica, would be $112.50. We, the city, do not lose that revenue. What that is it is a reduction given to the homestead owners, property owners, and then the state will then in turn reimburse the counties and the cities and the school boards. But that will be reflected on the bill, and then the money will be sent to the tax commissioner's office, and then they will disperse it to each of the entities. This is the millage rate schedule. Again, due to the state requirements, we're considered a tax increase even though we're maintaining the millage rate. There are 3 public hearings that are required. We have the one that we're going to be having today after this presentation. We have one tonight at 6 p.m. Next Tuesday, August the 29th, at 6 p.m. is public hearing number 3. After that public hearing would be the adoption of a millage rate. That is it.
That's your whole presentation?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. It was very concise. All right, council, does anyone have any questions for Jennifer on this presentation? Okay. I will do a public hearing now. So is there anyone here who would like to speak on the millage rate presentation that you just heard? Okay. Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. We have a budget workshop coming up in about 18 minutes. I would ask staff now if they have any questions for Jennifer. If not, I will recess for these next, 17 minutes. Anybody? All right, let's take a recess, Joel, for about